Hello, everyone. This is Colleen Lumsden, and on behalf of Aeris and 451 Research, I would like to welcome you and say thanks for attending today's webcast titled IoT for Global Expansion and Scale. Leading off the discussion today will be Brian Partridge, who is Research Vice President at 451 Research. Following Brian will be Amit Khetawat, who is VP of Product Management at Aeris. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. To ask a question, simply type it in the question box on your screen and we will get to as many as we can. The presentation slides are available for download in the resources section on your screen. There will be several polling questions throughout the webinar. Please make sure to choose your answers on the screen. And finally, please check back to the on-demand version of this webinar.
Hey, and let me join Colleen and Amit in welcoming everybody to our webinar today. We're so happy that you chose to spend a little bit of time with us talking about a very important topic. So my name's Brian Partridge. I'm a Research Vice President at 451, and I work with our team that's focused on IoT, or Internet of Things. At 451 Research, our overall research agenda is focused on digital transformation broadly, with a deep focus on innovation. One of the things that makes us unique in the industry is our Global Digital Infrastructure Alliance. This is our proprietary survey panel that we tap on a quarterly basis to arm our clients with the insights that they need to win. And we'll be looking at data specifically from some of those services today. On this webinar, we'll be discussing opportunities and challenges of scaling IoT projects from small, localized projects to global services that operate across borders and address a worldwide audience. These are the projects where ROI is clear and global expansion is the next logical phase of growth. We'll talk about some high potential IoT projects and how some of these can get stuck in pre-commercial phases from moving to global deployment, and importantly, offer some strategies and thoughts on how to get them unstuck. So in the lead-off spot here, I'm going to set the stage for the topic, and following the agenda, I'm going to start us off by reviewing some of our IoT survey data, focused specifically on IoT use cases, drivers, challenges, and inhibitors. Amit's going to pick it up from me and address global scaling from the Aeris perspective and include some really interesting real-world case studies. We'll end with plenty of time for Q&A, so please submit your questions through your Q&A tab. We'll also be asking you to engage with us via some poll questions that Amit will offer up in his part of the presentation. So let us get started. As I mentioned, my firm is broadly focused on digital transformation. So as you probably know, digital transformation is the use of digital technologies to gain efficiency, customer intimacy, or organizational agility. This slide here that you're looking at was taken from the opening keynote at our Big Tent event, happened just about a month ago, called HCTS 2019. I stole this chart from our Chief Research Officer Brett Azuma. And really the key point here is that when we think about the Mount Rushmore of digital transformation enablers, or the foundations of digital transformation for the next 10 years, we would call out edge computing, IoT, AI, and soon 5G as the key foundational pillars of digital transformation. And we believe that enterprises will really rise and fall based on their ability to collectively harness the power of these technologies to create business outcomes. But the focus today is in IoT, so let's double click on what's happening in the IoT industry. So what you need to know about IoT in general is that when you look at customers, no one really actually buys IoT. What they're really buying are use cases and outcomes, of which IoT is a core capability or enabler. So this data point here, taken from our Voice of the Enterprise IoT product, reveals the two top most popular use cases across a number of industry verticals. So what we see here is that these use cases we would generally categorize into three specific buckets: location tracking, remote asset management, and surveillance. Within verticals like transportation, use cases such as asset tracking and fleet management have had over a decade to mature and are currently either in global scale phase or about to enter it. And these two use cases in particular provide a significant ROI to those stakeholders and help de-risk their operations. And they're a great example where global scaling is germane to success. So let's do a double click into transportation specifically. So building off the two top use cases, here we see the longer end of the tail here. Again, we notice that most of the use cases are related to operational efficiency, although the use cases in the middle and lower half also present opportunities where it's really transformational in terms of the service or experience itself. When you start thinking about things like mobility services and connected car services around ADAS and so forth. But what we would generally observe in the IoT space is that the easier wins around IoT typically have come in the form of operational cost reduction, and the harder, more disruptive ROI wins are possible when IoT is added to customer-facing business processes. So I'll have more on this dynamic in an upcoming slide. Now, what we're looking here on this slide are the actual total number of IoT projects in play in different vertical markets. So you'll notice, interestingly, like healthcare has the highest total number of projects for within our respondent base underway, followed by manufacturing, and you can see the list of the others here. But the general point is that you notice that the pipelines are much larger in the stages that precede actual in production. So the takeaway here are the pipelines are large and growing, but companies can often find themselves hung up in these pre-production stages. And so whilst these verticals like healthcare and manufacturing are really excited about IoT, they oftentimes fail to meet the threshold for minimum viable product for a number of factors. And those can include, making the wrong technology choices out of the gate, or on the business side, starting these projects without a clear set of KPIs and ROI outcome goals in mind from the start, or even challenges that sort of fit in the cultural bucket, like issues with stakeholders from the OT group butting heads with IT, or failing to find vision match amongst diverse stakeholders. So getting these unstuck really requires smart planning and partnership strategy. One of the beauties of having the data assets that we have is we're able to look at how the market's evolved from a time series perspective. And so this is an aggregate view of the key drivers for IoT projects, again, going back to 2016. And generally, we group the drivers as internal facing. So those are those internal drivers focused on optimizing operations and business processes and reducing risk. And then this second tier, so the one in the line in the yellow and blue, are the external facing drivers. Those are about enabling new products and new customer service and customer experience type experiences. And so the general observation, as I had mentioned before, is that the internal facing IoT use cases have been the easier wins. But over just the past couple years here, we've seen a steady uptick and now a leveling off of these more external facing. And we think that this is going to remain consistent over the next 5 years. You think that we can expect to see round about 60 or 70% of IoT projects will continue to be focused internally, while round about 40% will be focused on these external drivers. So now let's talk about what the headwinds in this marketplace. So with regards to the factors that are holding IoT back, again, if we have the benefit of hindsight and looking back in time, what we can tell you is that the top concern here, security concerns, has always been the top inhibitor to IoT, but this has been thankfully a concern that has actually decreased over time. So when we asked the question in 2016, 60% of respondents cited security as the top inhibitor. Now we can see here that still it's the top inhibitor, but only 22% are citing it as such. Around that same sort of that same vector are the financial concerns like budget and ROI. You know, those concerns will always be there, but those also have fallen by about half. And these are all positive signs for the overall maturity of the IoT ecosystem. And for the IoT ecosystem in general, these challenges represent key insertion points for suppliers and partners like Aeris to, you know, really point their experience and solutions at these challenges and really be able to support enterprises in all scenarios and fill gaps on their behalf. So my colleague from Aeris will bring you through some real interesting case studies from their customer roster to bring some of this, animate this for us. So just to summarize, you know, this market is maturing, and it's maturing rapidly in these well understood and ROI'd use cases like fleet and asset tracking. So these are in growth mode and are expanding globally. Emerging markets like healthcare have opportunities for both domestic and global growth. There's an awful lot of excitement there, but sometimes these projects can get stuck before they meet minimal viability thresholds. And so, you know, generally IoT is a maturing pillar of digital transformation, and we're really excited about this, and the respondents to our surveys are excited as well. But they still need to address key challenges, especially around this topic of global scale. And so two of those would call out are the risk management around technology and partner selection. And then with those partners and technology selections, really ensuring that they address the security, privacy, and internal skills gaps that they've got in their businesses today. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Amit, who's going to pick up the ball from here. Over to you, Amit.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian, for that wonderful data-driven insight into the IoT market trends. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amit Khetawat. I'm the VP of Product Management, responsible for Aeris' connectivity solutions. So a little bit about Aeris. We are a technology partner that helps companies on their journey from unconnected products to connected products. And we do that in two ways. Our first offering is the Aeris Fusion IoT network, which is a dynamic and highly optimized cellular connectivity network with innovative solutions for IoT applications. And the second part of that is the Aeris Mobility Platform, which is a modular end-to-end software platform for primarily connected vehicle solutions. The company itself is located in the heart of Silicon Valley with facilities and operations around the globe. We are about 300 people strong with the right balance of engineering and operations, enabling us to drive innovation with agility. We have, and from numbers perspective, as you can see, the innovation is reflected in our numbers. We have close to 14+ million units on our network and serving about 4.5 billion messages per day. Today, we are going to discuss de-risking IoT programs as companies look to scale their IoT deployments regionally or consider expanding internationally. Specifically, we will look at key considerations for global expansion, enabling technologies and solutions, and finally tie it together with real-world use cases. So before we look at the specifics, I think we have our first poll question. So we'd like for the audience to tell us how many devices have you deployed. And you've got about 30 seconds to answer this question. And your choices are either it's not applicable in case that you have not started any deployment, or if you're in early stages of proof of concept, your choices are 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, 10K to 100K, and anything over 100,000 units deployed. Give you a few seconds to respond, and then we can look at the results together. Okay, let's try to see if we have our results. Okay, so that's an interesting mix. So it looks like a lot of people are still in early design phase. So we see about 60% not applicable, to imply they are either a vendor supplying into the ecosystem or in early phases of IoT deployments. Then really 20% in a proof of concept stage. And it's interesting to see that there's about 20% in that 10K to 100K. So I would say it's an interesting mix from our audience perspective. So let's look at how these companies that have not deployed or have proof of concepts, how they can scale. So there are many tasks that go into scaling any IoT program. Today we are going to focus on 3 key areas as it relates to de-risking expansion programs. These 3 areas include the connectivity technology selection, supporting partner and operational technologies, and region-specific regulations management. So let's take a look at the first area in a bit more detail. Specifically, what are the factors that go into deciding and selecting the appropriate connectivity technology? The connectivity technology selection really starts with assessing your application as well as your go-to-market requirements. And your go-to-market requirements can range anywhere from assessing cost sensitivity for the connectivity hardware, the overall time it might take to implement, test, and deploy a particular technology, or application performance needs such as latency, battery life, and data throughput. Now, unlike a few years ago where you had 1 or 2 options for the connectivity technology, really advancements and standardization have opened up multiple options that can be leveraged and streamlined specifically for your IoT application needs. Let's take a quick example. There are many emerging battery-powered IoT applications where the entire business case is highly reliant upon the useful life of a single battery. As you can see in this picture here from row 3, there are at least 4 options that may be suitable based on that primary criteria of battery life. You would then layer with other secondary criteria such as performance and cost and narrow it down to a couple of choices that meet your business needs. However, there is an additional very important criteria that goes hand in hand for selecting the right connectivity technology. And that is assessing the availability of the chosen connectivity technology options in the regions you expect to deploy or expand. Now here there is good news and bad news. So while there are many connectivity choices to meet your application requirements, the regional availability of various options can often handicap your expansion plans. However, with the right combination of suitable partnerships, those handicaps can be overcome. As an example, battery power applications can leverage LPWA technology, which is basically low power wide area technology options. And here we have grouped them, options such as LTE-M, NB-IoT, Sigfox, and LoRa, all under that LPWA option. Now, as you can see in the charts, LPWA technology such as LTE-M is widely available in North America, but not so much in the rest of the world as they are still being rolled out. So a company that is deployed in North America and looking to go to the rest of the world, a strategy that could be used is a hybrid connectivity option that enables deployment in North America with LTE-M and near-term expansion into the rest of the world with 2G, 3G technology, which is widely available, as you can see, in the rest of the world. But at the same time, in choosing a hardware that future-proofs them and the rest of the world with that LPWA option. And just in case if the audience needs these two charts, we will make it available on the Aeris website and also through this presentation. Okay, so before we jump into the next category, we have our second poll question. We'd like for our audience to help us understand what your expansion plans are. Are you looking to grow it domestically? And if you're looking to grow internationally, what are the regions? Are you looking to grow in Europe region, Asia Pacific, or other international locations? We'll have about a few seconds to answer this question. Okay, that should be about sufficient time. Let's see if we have the results. Okay. That's a very interesting mix here. So 80% of expansion plans are domestic and 20% are looking to grow internationally. Okay, so that's a very interesting result, and we'll try to address both of these expansion plans in our next set of slides. So let's look at the next area for risk management of expansion projects, which is selecting the regional distributors. But a key thing is the supporting operational technologies along with just the supporting partners there. And in particular, when we talk about operational technologies, this relates to enablement of these partners with suitable operational technologies and processes. So really there are three considerations enabling a large-scale distribution network. The first consideration is optimizing your supply chain. And for all of these three considerations, I think what you have to think about is which processes you centralize and which processes and steps that you can distribute and leverage your partner network. So the first one around the supply chain logistics, we recommend centralizing this process, and this process is really around manufacturing automation, spanning from assembling your device to fully testing it prior to downstream distribution to regional partners. And this in turn could imply that your manufacturing is done in one region, but your actual distribution and deployment is in a completely different region. Then you also need to take into account that your product, once distributed, could be sitting on the shelf for a long time before the distributors are actually able to get it in the hands of the end customer for deployment. The second consideration is related to your actual operations management of your connected devices. And here for scale, we recommend investing in technologies that enable sharing of selective control and visibility of your operational data with the downstream partners. So effectively accomplishing this task in a distributed manner as opposed to centralizing your operations and bringing all the support to a central systems. And so what this allows you to do is to delegate and scale your operation responsibilities via your downstream partners versus being bottlenecked by a single centralized support system. And a final consideration is to choose technologies and partners that enable third-party billing. Now, specifically, this capability becomes critical for business models where devices have variable data usage based on regional deployments, and these variable data costs associated with the variable data usage are typically not built into the BOM for the devices. In these situations, you would want to consider having your connectivity provider being able to bill your downstream partners directly based on their device data usage. Our final category for de-risking global expansion is related to managing regional security and compliance needs. Here there are really, again, three subcategories of security vulnerability management that need to be factored in for regional security compliance. And these subcategories typically serve as a foundational for vertical specific compliance requirements. The first is ensuring a globally scalable device identity management solution. This in turn requires security by design concepts, such as avoiding hackable identities like user ID and password, and ensuring that any chosen identity solution can scale for the entire lifecycle of devices, all the way from manufacturing to your distribution to deployments. Now, a few examples of what such proven identity solutions choices are includes the use of cryptographic symmetric keys, X.509 certificates, and there are quite a few technologies there. You'll also want to investigate in options for what we term as zero-touch provisioning that can help you scale onboarding your devices and deploying in a rapid manner. The second subcategory is related to data access management. And in particular, this is implementing suitable access control for who, what, and where data can be sent to. And this has significant implication, as you guys probably know, the ever-growing concerns around data privacy, as well as IoT devices itself becoming weapons for security attacks. Now, some examples of solutions to consideration involve operating your devices in a kiosk mode, effectively, turning your device as a single application, or leveraging network-based firewalls to streamline, where your data flows from devices to your backend only. The last subcategory here is related to identifying, isolating, and fixing devices that are compromised, and being able to do that in real time, effectively a zero-day vulnerability management. Now, this typically involves having tools for first being able to detect anomalies, then tools to be able to remotely fix those devices. Now, this remote device fixing involves over-the-air capabilities, and here the challenges can be from operations cost, as well as time to complete these remote patches for your entire fleet of devices, regardless of where they are deployed. You want to invest in technologies that allow you to scale both from detection as well as being able to do these remote management effectively, I guess, in a cost-effective manner as well. Now, before we go to our next section for real-world cases, I think we have our final poll question here. So here we would like the audience to help us understand, based on what we have discussed thus far, what you view are your key challenges for growth and scale. Is that related to the connectivity technology selection, or is it more towards selection of suitable partners and operational technologies? Is managing regional security a big concern? And if none of this is applicable, you can use the not applicable choice there. Give you a few seconds to answer, and we can look at the results together. Okay, sufficient time. Let's see if we have the results. So that's very interesting. 80% of the audience has selected the suitable partner selection and operational technologies. And 20% have implied not applicable, which I assume is at early stages of design and not really looking to scale. Okay. So now we'll look at some real-world use cases that Aeris has enabled at global scale using our technologies and solutions. So first, we'll start out by summarizing the core Aeris technologies and solutions that enable global scale. So as you can see in the picture, growing from left to right, it starts with multiple connectivity options that are globally available, but are regionally optimized for high quality, reliability, and cost. And this is accomplished via our underpinning technology of a fully virtualized core network combined with a single pane of glass platform, which our customers can integrate into their own applications via RESTful APIs. And these core technologies enable our customers to future-proof their investment by leveraging a continually evolving network and rich feature set. So our first use case is related to a proven solar solution company expanding from Europe to Africa, where they had a large addressable market for off-grid solar usage. Their key challenge in this expansion were related to uncertainty around reliable network coverage, as well as the ability to manage devices on multiple networks. Their secondary concern was around the security of data from their solar panels in these uncertain operating environments. What Aeris did was to offer them a connectivity solution which enabled multiple networks in Africa, providing them reliable coverage when and where required, along with a single pane of glass for managing devices both in Europe as well as various parts of Africa. In addition, Aeris leveraged the connection lock functionality, which is basically a network-based firewall that ensured lockdown of data from their panels, which was only being able to communicate to their backend servers. And this was done with very, very little effort on the customer's part. The key outcome was really the material reduction in operational oversight that this company had to do, along with significantly reduced deployment times and a very reliable network for their off-grid projects in Africa. Our second use case is related to a company with an asset tracking solution, and in particular, a cold chain monitoring of assets that was looking to expand from United States to Asia Pacific and Europe regions. Their key challenge in this global expansion was related to maintaining their differentiation of long battery life of their tracker devices, as well as ensuring that the location SLAs they offer to their customers can be met. So working with Aeris, the customer was able to identify hybrid hardware that could support multiple technology for longer battery life, as well as account for regional variations in available technology. Aeris was able to provide them connectivity options that not only leverage today's regional availability options, but also future-proofing with the LPWA connectivity technology when and where they become available. In addition, Aeris was able to provide complementary cellular location technology for improving and helping them meet their location SLAs. The key outcome for this customer was not only access to new regions, but more importantly, the time to market for these new regions was incredibly little and low. Our final use case is related to in-home medical devices company that was looking to domestically scale within the United States. And this company's challenge were finding a cost-effective connectivity for the insured life of their devices and enabling technologies to scale via distribution partners. And the way this company was basically monetizing their solution was validating that the devices were continually used for the ensured life of the device. And as a result, they needed their downstream partners to be able to do that validations for scalable operations. And the second challenge for this customer was a need for a cost-effective over-the-air management solution for predictable rollout of remote updates, and primarily for compliance and security reasons. Aeris was able to provide connectivity offerings aligned with their business models, as well as connectivity-aware OTA orchestration APIs that help them scale their homegrown OTA solution. In addition, Aeris has an offering which is called our distribution package that enables selective sharing of connectivity usage data to their downstream distribution partners. And the company was able to leverage this offering to help their distributors validate continual usage of their medical devices. And the resulting outcome were a better patient engagement, not only by the company, the customer, but also with their downstream distribution partners, resulting in higher intake of those medical devices, as well as the business model enable additional healthcare insight use cases. So to recap, the Aeris Fusion IoT network really provides foundational technologies for global scale that starts with global connectivity with multiple technology optimized for regional cost and coverage benefits. Then the distribution package really enables selective sharing of operational data with your downstream partners. And lastly, the core security solutions in enabling things like lockdown of your device data to your backend and OTA orchestration APIs for scalable remote security patch management. I think we're now going to transition into Q&A phase, and I'm going to hand it back to Brian.
Thanks, Amit. That was really insightful presentation. We've got a bunch of questions that have come in from the audience. I will farm these off as appropriate between yourself and myself. First one here is, I'll give to you, Amit. It says, how do you de-risk IoT deployments during growth periods, especially if it's unknown which regions that they may expand into? How would you address that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way we recommend, I think, and a few of our customers have done that, is to future-proof. As we saw in some of the charts, newer technologies are still being deployed in the rest of the world, and so it starts with choosing the hardware that allows you to deploy in today's technologies, but is able to also accommodate our future needs. And as an example, we are seeing hardware manufacturers create radio modules that have LTE-M, NB-IoT with 2G and 3G built in them. So for customers that want to ensure that they're not impacted by technology sunsets, they should really choose these kinds of hybrid modules that today they can deploy on a 2G, and as the newer networks get deployed, they're able to flip the same hardware in the field to newer technologies. And a complementary part of the hardware is choosing a connectivity vendor, a supplier, that can enable multiple technologies and has multiple networks with those various technology options.
Got it. I see one here addressed to me. It says, why doesn't 451 include mobility cloud as a key driver of digital transformation? I should have been more clear that we also include cloud as part of what we describe as edge, which is essentially cloud services moving closer to users. And mobility is clearly an underlying component of digital transformation. The reason that we don't put it up on that Mount Rushmore anymore is because it's reached a level of maturity where, mobility is just a part of a part of the tool chain that any enterprise uses. It doesn't require a discrete set of investments and proof of concept activity and so forth. And it's a good point. So mobility has reached that phase of maturity where it just is, and we think that IoT is on that very same path. So when we look back in 10 years, we're not going to be talking about IoT discretely as a foundation. It's just going to be part of what we use in business to conduct business. See another one for you, Amit. It says, we're a U.S. company looking to expand into the European theater. What are some of the cellular connectivity selection considerations for expansion from U.S. to EU?
Yeah, so I think it starts with, as you saw, first looking at your application requirements. And if your application is cost-sensitive, battery-based, then looking at LPWA absolutely makes sense. Especially in the United States, those are widely available. Technologies like LTE-M can meet those requirements. Then, as you look to take that same requirements out to Europe, now in Europe, we are seeing NB-IoT and LTE-M getting deployed in pockets. So what we recommend to our customers is really those pockets are very fragmented. So rather than be unsure and have not so reliable coverage on these newer technologies, they should plan in phase one to deploy on 2G and 3G networks, which are widely available in most parts of Europe. And then as these newer technologies mature from a network deployment perspective, they should be able to flip without having to recall through OTA systems to these newer technologies. So that's what we would recommend is a hybrid approach of choosing, new generation technologies such as LTE and LTE-M in the United States and sticking with 2G and 3G in phase one for the European expansion. And within, I would say about 12 months to 18 months is when we expect wider availability of LTE-M and NB-IoT in the European markets.
Cool. I've got another one here, and I think it sort of picks up on that. And the question is specifically, why would we consider 4G LTE variants for IoT with 5G happening now? And I think it's important for the audience to understand the real, the underlying dynamics of the timing of 5G. So there's been a lot of hype in the media around 5G deployments, and to the credit, especially in the United States, the major operators here have been very aggressive in deploying what I would describe as the initial phase of 5G commercial services. But to be clear, those are focused on smartphone and connected home type solutions, often in the millimeter wave spectrum band. And so when you hear people talk about IoT vis-a-vis 5G connectivity, that's a few years away yet, and especially as you look at the worldwide availability by region, it's going to be quite a bit of time until you start to see native 5G connections for IoT devices. And the other thing to know is that the 4G variant, so M and NB that Amit was just referring to, are actually part of the 5G spec. So investments into those technologies made today will continue to be supported even through the 5G life cycle. So hopefully that clarifies that question. I've got another one. It's a kind of a complex question, Amit. Let me see if I can summarize here. So the question is about, in the diagram, you can see the CMP component, but he also views that device management component is different, And if you have a diversity of devices, is there a way to manage that complexity? Does Aeris do anything that helps to manage that from a device management perspective?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting question. So the way we see it, I mean, that's correct. There is the CMP, there's connectivity management. The device management, includes things like being able to do over-the-air updates, being able to do remote configurations of the devices, and being able to diagnose, specific devices. So what we have today at Aeris is obviously the connectivity management platform, but we are investing and building out technologies. Things like OTA orchestration APIs today can be integrated into customers' own device management or application platforms, but it is on our roadmap that we are looking to actually offer a complete turnkey for OTA management. Now, as far as configuration and application diagnostics, those typically are very application specific, and our experience, based on our customers' feedback, is generic platforms, device management platforms often don't work. So you end up, working with those platform vendors to customize to your specific application needs, or you end up developing your own. And what we found most effective is customers who build that logic for application configuration and application diagnostics into their own backend application. That's the best way to go about, handling this device management.
Cool, got it. I'll pick this one off here. It's one of the best examples of IoT use cases going global in the consumer sector. So we did, I'll grant you that we talked a lot about the enterprise and industrial enterprise sector here, but there are lots of really cool things happening in the consumer sector as well. We all know about the wearable computing devices on our wrists for health tracking and doing various things. I also think a really interesting segment that's emerging is around connected health equipment in the home and on the move. So bicycles, connected home health mirrors, and so forth. That's a real interesting sector, lots of money going into that space, and really a great potential. I would also say, generally connected home healthcare. So for non-acute type cases, scales and so forth are really interesting segments. And of course, anything around surveillance and connected home type solutions, whilst they won't necessarily always require a cellular connection, those experiences are getting better. The sort of the value proposition and pricing have come down such that it's technology available for a broader set of potential buyers, both in mature markets but also in emerging markets. Amit, one for you here. The best way to deal with SIM localization if I ship products into different countries, I have a feeling that one's about eSIM, iSIM, but what do you guys say about that in terms of localization?
Yeah, so you're right, Brian. The eSIM, and just for clarity from a definitions, the eSIM people often confuse or mix it up with embedded SIMs that they can solder on their devices for security reasons. But eSIM is also referred to as subscription management, where you're able to load multiple network profiles and select locally a profile based on regional compliance or cost effectiveness. So the subscription management technology as such, I'd say, is still at early phases. And one of the key challenges we have found that our customers run into is that their business models are not able to sustain the overheads and the cost overheads that are typically tied with such a subscription management platform. So what we have been recommending to our customers is if those costs cannot be absorbed, if it can be, that is the ideal solution. But even in subscription management, it's not just the technology itself. The other challenge that customers run into is getting 2 or 3 carriers to agree upon putting their network profiles on the same SIM. And that's usually a business challenge, a policy that the network operator makes that they will not be co-located on the same physical SIM, regardless of the actual technical feasibility. So what we recommend, and that is a offering that it's on our Aeris' roadmap, is what we call as a dual MZ or a multi-MZ, where it's not tied to subscription management, as in you don't do dynamic network profiles uploads to the SIM. It comes built in with a couple of profiles, and in our case, we are looking at combining our North America offering with our global offering so that it becomes a single SKU, which the customers can leverage the hybrid hardware we talked about and not have to worry about selecting a SIM for North America and another one for the rest of the world. So that's on our roadmap. We expect to announce that in a relatively short amount of time.
Thanks, Amit. I think I've got another one for you here. And the question is about remote security patch management and what are the key considerations when dealing with global scale for security patches. What do you say about that?
Yeah. So it really comes down to, remote security implies your devices are in the field and you've discovered a security vulnerability and you need to patch those devices. And oftentimes what you need to, and this is done upfront, is to make sure that those devices are capable of receiving over-the-air updates, and then in the back end having systems, software that can help you scale. And what that means is oftentimes, campaign management style, because you may have 100,000 devices and you may not want to upgrade them all at once. Typically our recommendation is to roll out the software to a handful of devices based on geography or a specific model or make of that device. And once you have confirmed that the over-the-air update does not cause any unintended effect, then you can start to plan for a rollout to an entire device space. Again, there you want to run campaigns effectively, doing it in batches as opposed to rolling it out across the board. Now, a key thing to consider here is automation, because oftentimes your devices will be online, they may not be online, they may actually be in a data transaction, sending data to your backend servers. So being aware of the connectivity states of those devices, is it on the network, not on the network, and then being able to leverage that information in orchestrating your rollouts. And for Aeris has exactly that solution. Is today we offer these OTA orchestration APIs, which our customers can leverage and tie that into their own OTA softwares and campaign managers. And then on the horizon, we have a roadmap item to actually provide that complete end-to-end OTA orchestration platform as well.
Got it. We've got a number of questions about getting copies of the presentation, and yes, we will provide that to you. So rest assured that's coming your way. It looks like we have time for one more. This one looks like one for you, Amit. So what are the motivations for sharing connectivity information with resellers or partners, especially if they've already factored cost of connectivity into the product BOM?
Yeah, that's a good question. So here the considerations are really, it's not, we highly recommend that OEMs that manufacture products to do the connectivity provider selection and in fact ship their hardware with SIMs. That way that gives them control on what the underlying network is. the benefit in sharing, or selectively sharing connectivity data with downstream partners is really around creating a scalable operations model. Right? As we discussed, if you're scaling via distributors, one model is anytime the distributor has an issue with the devices, whether it's connected on the network, which carrier it is, they can funnel all those requests back to the OEM. But a better way to scale here is to enable those distributors to self-serve. And there are technologies that are available, like for example, Aeris has technologies where we can selectively, what that means is, specific devices which the distributor is responsible for, it can be made accessible to them, the various connectivity information, and then the operational parts of that can be managed by the distributor in a standalone manner without relying on the OEM, which can become a significant bottleneck as the OEM scales to multiple distributors.
Got it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brian and Amit. That concludes today's webcast. As a reminder, the on-demand replay will be available on 24 soon. Additionally, you can download a copy of the slides in the resource section on your screen. On behalf of Aeris and 451 Research, thank you so much for attending and have a great day.